All right. I tried. I went in trying to be like, look, the changes they've made. The game is great now. Civ 7 is good. And I can't, man. I can't. I'll break the ice. I'll finally say it. At this state of time, 6 months in, and how the game currently is, I don't think Civ 7 is the game for me, nor do I think it's very good. There's a handful of you in the comments just copying, pasting, waiting for this moment to type "shill" to post in the comments. Honestly, that's fine. If you feel that way, I don't blame you, but I would be remiss to say that I really wanted Civ 7 to be good, and I still do to this day. That's not to say that it can't be good, but I mean, as of right now, in August, 6 months later after release, in my personal opinion, it's not. Post-production boasts here, they actually released a patch on 8.19 a little bit after I finished this script. It does fix yeah, we'll touch on that later. There's a couple things I'll be talking about and breaking down throughout this video. The actual problems of Civ 7, how rushed the game actually was, where we go from here. But to start off, hey, how's it going? Long time no see. How many times now have I said, oh, I'm back, I'm starting back up again, just to release a video in 3 months from that time? I'm making an entire video here shortly, kind of about the state of the channel, where I'm going post Civ 7, but the too long didn't read is that I was kind of on the border of quitting YouTube, and in the meantime, I've just been working as an editor for other YouTubers on the side, but that upcoming video will be more in depth of what I want to do, all that jazz. I'm not quitting, don't worry about that, but anyways, enough about me. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. First things first, this is going to be a very critical, harsh re-review of Civilization 7. I feel like I was a bit too high on copium in my initial review, because, I mean, one, I genuinely wanted the game to be good, and I had a lot of fun. I put about 200 plus hours into the game, and I had a lot of fun in that time frame, but also two, I was under the impression that upon release, a lot of the things that we brought up as criticism or things that need to be improved upon, were going to be fixed, or at least bare minimum recognize that they need to be worked on day zero, and that just wasn't the case. That didn't disbar me from criticizing the game. I mean, I did criticize it quite a bit in that review video. To be honest, I mean, I still feel at this time today pretty disenfranchised to post Civilization content. I mean, yeah, the negativity is one thing. It does suck to post something Civ 7 related, and just 90% of the feedback in regards to the video is garbage. But honestly, at this point, I don't even care about that. I mean, I've been on the internet for a very long time. It is what it is, but I think it's very obvious at this point the game was rushed, like a year too early rushed. It feels like a bit of a broken record at this point, but honestly, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills that no one outside of social media, or just, I mean, Marbazier is like kind of the only one saying it, that the game is rushed. And for me, this kind of goes back to when we were invited to Firaxis HQ to playtest the game. Now, I want to make it clear, and people are going to be like, you don't have to preface stuff before negative things, but I do. It's 2025. I feel like there's like a massive lack of media literacy when it comes to nuance and tone. I do need to make this clear. But I want to make it clear that being invited when I was just like some 70K Andy on YouTube to play test the next Civ, being flown out, wined and dined, that was an incredible experience. I'm very grateful. Firaxis did not have to do that. That, however, doesn't negate criticism and feedback. I mean, there are still things I posted in my initial review back in August of 2024 that haven't been fixed this day. I'm not sure what went wrong here. I mean, was it like 2K or Take-Two Interactive rushing them? Some people were speculating that it was the hubris of thinking what they had was incredible and they were blindsided to criticism. I mean, there's probably like a tiny little bit of validity to that, but it definitely feels like Take-Two Interactive was more or less saying, hey, we have GTA 6 being released in the fall, and we know you've always released Civ games in the fall, but we can't have it compete with GTA 6, so you'll have to release it 8 months early, which, ironically enough, GTA 6 ended up getting delayed anyways, so post script writing boast here. I will say I'm like 99.9999% confident this game was pushed too early because of the 1.2.4 patch that was released on 8.19. Look at the patch. I mean, they're adding sound effects to narrative rewards, capture settlements, and raise keep settlements, as well as notification sounds. They're adding audio sounds 6 months into game release. Like, you can't make it any more clear or obvious. It's funny because this is just stuff I claimed about in my initial review of how empty the game feels, how you don't know when anything is happening in the game. I mean, I literally had to make a video and a bunch of shorts showing people what certain things do because the game just doesn't tell you what to do. You want to know how close you have to be to make a trade route? Too bad. You have to just guess. You want to know what this information is for this civic or this building? Too bad. The Civilopedia part of it just doesn't exist. There are some things that are not included from just being rushed, like Auto Explorer, etc. But this is just kind of a great example of what the overarching emphasis that I'll point to later is Firaxis consistently keeps missing the forest for the trees in Civilization 7. I mean, here's a really good example. It was a couple days ago. The modder JNR made a post on r/civ about modern age buildings and how yields and happiness just scale exponentially because of bad coding. Let's go ahead and read this out. Did you ever wonder why happiness stops being an issue in the modern age despite having so many specialists? Why yields explode so fast? Turns out that some buildings have hidden scaling that was either forgotten to be referenced in their descriptions or was coded by the same person who thought the grocer should give the +1 food on unimproved tiles. That was a big thing in the beginning of the release. First, effect stack per building per city. Every laboratory gives +1 science on quarters in all cities with laboratory. That means if you have 5 laboratories, those 5 cities will all get +5 science on every single quarter. Like if you got 7 city parks, each rural vegetated tile in those 7 cities will receive 7 happiness. Like if this is intended, then that's a problem because there's nothing in the UI that would remotely let you know this is intended. But if it's not, then there's some big disconnect between like the team that actually codes the game versus the people who wrote the actual mechanics of the game, or there's just like some extreme organizational issues in Firaxis that keep popping up because time and time again this stuff just keeps happening. It's honestly, it just sucks, man. It sucks. I have friends at Firaxis. I have a rapport with the people who work at Firaxis and 2K, but I'm kind of jaded at this point. I mean, but I remember being told verbatim to my face when I was airing grievances about the game to just trust me. It'll be fixed. Don't worry. The game's going to be great. Just to trust me. And I don't know. Like I'm probably not going to play Civ 7 until their version of Gathering Storm or Brave New World comes out at this point. I mean, shout out to Ursa Ryan and Paisley Trees for holding it down, man. Sheesh. Well, once again, let's preface this next section by stating the obvious because it needs to be said. Like, the Firaxis team is working very hard at correcting their mistakes and pushing patches to fix, quote-unquote, this game. The devs obviously very much care about the game. I mean, they care about the community. They want the game to succeed. It's not like Firaxis, the devs are just sitting there being like, ooh, like with a cigar in their mouth, you know, counting their cash. Like, that's not how things work. Doing things like adding 10 turns before the age, continuity mode, trying to make the age transition less wonky. Like, these are things we should be giving Firaxis their flowers for, but to a point. The problem with modern age development, or modern age game development, I should say, is kind of the problem with everything in the world. Capitalism. Where profits and increasing the value of shareholders' pockets matters more than the actual product, let alone the art of the game. Because of this, games are more often than not, rushed to be released before they're done cooking, and while they won't say it, because I mean, it should be obvious, why would they, is that Civ 7 was just released too early. I'm going to keep hammering down this point that this game was released too early. It's 6 months into the game being fully released, and the Civilopedia for stuff that is already in the game is still incomplete. Now, I'm not saying incomplete in that you'll be adding stuff later on as like a never-ending novel type situation. Incomplete as in there's stuff in the game that just doesn't exist in the Civilopedia. Another really obvious example is the fact that in the loading screen on release, Gwendolyn Christie only had like 1 to 2 lines that were read out in the entire paragraph of that Civ's description, and now 6 months later, it's been patched in so she reads all of it, just like Sean Bean did in Civ 6, just like William Morgan Shepherd did in Civ 5. And it sucks that while I'm typing this up, I'm getting angry again at the game because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the one to post the thumbnail and be like, this game sucks, rah, rah, rage bait, anger, anger, anger. But I mean, the game is just not doing itself any favors in this regard. In my review video, you know, I pointed out, well, it's kind of always been like this with Firaxis where they release a not great vanilla game and the expansions fix the game. And while I was right, it's 2025. I'm done. I'm done with having to beta test games for developers on release day and then wait 5 years until the game is perfect and we have a good game to enjoy. We did it with Cyberpunk 2077. We did it with City Skylines 2, which is still not a great game. We did it with No Man's Sky. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. And here we are with Civ 7, and I am tired of it. And I think a lot of people are. And unfortunately, the only way that developers are going to learn is if people vote with their wallet. And at this point, I don't even know if it's going to help. Aside from that, like, why do I not even enjoy playing the game? Like, what is it about the game? And I'll give you the too long didn't read. The game is boring. Why is it boring? We have to start with the core philosophies of the game. If you couldn't tell, I haven't played Civ 7 in about 5 out of the 6 months that this game has been released, since March 26th to be exact. Well, until this last week to see if anything has changed, but that's obvious. Now, I will say part of this definitely had to do with a little bit of burnout. I put in a total of 350 hours into the game between when we got early access in January until March 26th. But as stated in earlier this video, I just don't think the game is in a very fun spot right now to play. I'm not going to talk about the obvious things that should have been in day one that took multiple patches into the game, like auto explore, etc. Those have been discussed ad nauseum and will eventually make their way into the game if they haven't done already, such as research crewing, although I will get into that later. For me personally, the actual problems of Civ 7 are unfortunately due to the core gameplay mechanics of the game. I honestly think that Firaxis miscalculated and tried to identify a problem that doesn't actually exist, or at least exists in concept, but in reality doesn't necessarily matter. And that problem is Civ players not finishing a game to its completion and restarting. It feels like a political theory problem. You can know and read all the theory you want and regurgitate theory soundbites back up, but in practice, with everyday people who are just trying to get by, theory doesn't necessarily matter. It's the actionable results that do. And this concept of gamers not finishing a game led to so many changes to the core ideas of civilization that Firaxis, it feels like they took their rule of thirds concept out back to live on the farm for the rest of their days. Okay, maybe that's a bit hyperbolic, but you get what I'm saying. It's honestly, in my eyes, the symptom of the entirety of what I've just been calling the board game problem. How many times have you heard this board game problem brought up in the strategy game sphere with Monopoly as an example? I mean, I've probably made this example countless times on stream, and it's where a lot of discourse comes out of, but Monopoly is the most egregious board game problem example of them all, as there comes a point in the game of Monopoly where literally every single person knows who's going to win because they all have the hotels, they control like 99% of the money in the game. I'll be honest, we have to move past using Monopoly as an example in the board game problem because this isn't a board game problem, it's a late stage capitalism problem that's built into the game of Monopoly. I mean, it's inherent to the game. Monopoly was initially called the landlord's game that was about anti-monopolies in the early 1900s. That's not to say this problem doesn't exist, but I feel like it's been blown out of proportion so much that it shouldn't be treated as such, let alone at all, if I'm being honest. This isn't a one-to-one comparison, but bear with me. Let's take a game like StarCraft. Generally, in 99% of cases in competitive StarCraft, most of the games do not end when the winning player tracks down all of the 15 floating Terran buildings flying across the map and they're killing them with mutalisks. The game ends when the Terran player realizes he has zero hope in winning, types GG, fuck you noob, 3 Hatchmuta no skill, and leaves the game. Does the Zerg player still see this as like an incomplete game because they technically didn't play it to the game's designed completion of 100%? No, they don't. Obviously, this is not a one-to-one example comparing StarCraft to Civ, but I feel like there's enough of a foundation between 4X and RTS games that the comparison, has some weight to it. I mean, competitive multiplayer Civ is just basically a slowed-down RTS. Sure, in theory, you would love it if every single player of Civ played the game all the way down to the victory screen, looked through the graphs. Why are there still no graphs in Civ 7? And going, wow, I did that. But in reality, that's just not a thing that happens, and honestly, it doesn't really need to. Civ 4, Civ 5, Civ 6, they're all still beloved games and have an insane amount of replayability and playtime, whether or not people completely finish the game. Obviously, I don't have the backend data, nor do I have the surveys that Firaxis does, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard Ed Beach say something along the lines of, the most common things we heard from players was how they just don't finish games all the way. I mean, I know I definitely heard it during the reveal, during dev streams, and I'm starting to come to belief that this actually doesn't matter in the long run, and that this isn't some big catch-all that Firaxis thinks it is, and that this core philosophy is hindering Civ 7 rather than helping it. It's funny because I was talking with some new friends I made over this last weekend about Civ and the game as a whole, and they keep reiterating what I've been hearing all along from people who don't play 1,000 hours into this game. They still only really play Civ 5, about some of them still play Civ 6, and they would constantly ask me about Civ 7, and I would talk to them about these problems and how they wanted the game to be completed all the way, so they split them to 3 ages, and it's really, really funny because a lot of the times I would get a constant theme of, yeah, in Civ 5 I would get into the end of the game and maybe I wouldn't finish all the way, or Civ 6 I would hit a specific timing, build the wonders I wanted to do, and I wouldn't finish the game all the way, but I would end up starting a new game and put another 10 hours into that new game, and then I do it again, and then I would do it again, and then I would do it again until I have like 1,000 hours into Civ, and I heard this countless times, over and over and over again. And yeah, it's a small sample size and it's like going up to people that I know and everything. But the more and more I hear it, the more and more I'm starting to believe that it's actually not a real problem. People who do this, who put thousands of hours into the game and don't finish the games all the way, are still having fun. They're still enjoying the game, and the new changes with the agent transitions break this feeling, further reinstating my theory of Firaxis missing the forest for the trees. To continue with this theory of missing the forest for the trees, let's kind of explore a bit more by breaking down some mechanics in Civ 7 that I've identified as core problems, and are the main portions of Civ 7 for me personally that I just find unfun. Yes, ages are getting worked on. The latest patch actually addressed this specifically, but honestly, I'm not sure how you're going to fix this without the fact that realizing the ages themselves are a problem. After opening up and playing a few games recently, I still have the same criticism I did about ages previously. They break up the game into 3 mini games instead of playing in one coherent game. And I find this kind of funny because I feel the point of no one actually finishes the game, they don't get to the end screen because they know I've already run, was hammered into us in the development of Civ 7, yet creating this specific age system kind of makes that problem worse. I personally keep finding myself doing the opposite of what Firaxis wants me to do, and I just end up restarting a new game at the end of the Antiquity Age instead of continuing on. With the addition of legacy paths as well and how narrow and unfun they are in the Exploration Age, I just find myself not wanting to do what Firaxis intends in the Second Age and just restarting the first. Ironically, you also just end up playing some weird version of Western colonialism and running into the roadblock of other civs, already having multiple cities plop down, and that's just a whole, like I said, that's a whole other issue. That's whatever. But that brings me into a portion of this section about pacing and momentum, which also ties into the ages themselves. Momentum is a massive, massive piece of gauging how I'm having fun in a game. I don't have the back-end data that Firaxis does, like I mentioned, so take this with like a personal experience grain of salt. But for me, as a creator in the game, putting thousands of hours into the franchise, reading all the comments, people interacting with me, the majority of people end up finding that the early game of most 4X games, not just Civ, is the most fun. This is very, very prevalent in the beginning of the Antiquity Age of Civ 7, as you would expect. Scouting around, finding the best places to settle, meeting leaders for the first time, the early age weaponry, simplistic buildings, planning for the future, it all coalesces into a very nice pace of play. However, with the combination of age transitions and legacy paths, there's just no momentum anymore, as any momentum you gain, it gets wiped away to start fresh in the next age. Now, some of you are going to go, but Boast, it's not 100% wiped, it's not like you're starting from scratch. And yes, obvious, thank you for that. But in the context of where you are in the game, of what you're doing, you are more or less starting from the beginning all over again, or at least Firaxis is leaning towards making you do that. I complained about this the first time, I'm still going to complain about it here. Even with adding the 10 turns to the next age, the age transitions are still off because they ruin the momentum of the game. Yes, your units can now keep the same place from between transitions, and even civilian units like settlers and merchants can be carried over to the next age. But this doesn't even matter because now you have to go through the whole thing again of settling a new content, starting over from the beginning of the tech tree, reestablishing relations with civs, starting a religion from scratch, and beginning new milestones, let alone you don't even get to do the things that maybe you were trying to do in the previous age, such as going to war with someone and continuing that war and taking their cities, building the wonders that you wanted to do. But Boast, you can just ignore the legacy paths. You don't have to play by them. And I'll be honest, I really hate this argument. I think it's such a bad argument. If you have to ignore the main mechanisms of progressing the game to make you, the player, a better Civ in the long run, it's bad game design. I'm going to say it, it's bad game design. In Civ 6, I could choose not to get a Golden Age, and if I did get a Golden Age, I could just choose one of the non-monumentality bonuses, but why would I? It allows me, the player, to get better bonuses so I can play the game better and win better. If choosing legacy paths and winning them harder means I get better bonuses for the next age and allows me to win better and harder, a player is not going to ignore them, especially when in the tutorial and everywhere in the game makes it seem that doing them is required to win the game. Tying this back to age transitions, the fact that completing these legacy path milestones furthers the transition progress of the game essentially ruins the momentum and feel of the game. Gamers do not want to feel like they're being punished because they're doing too well. I cannot tell you how many times I've been like 2 to 3 turns away from finishing a wonder or taking a civ's capital or city in a war when the age progress goes from 85% in one turn to 100 in the next turn because 3 civs finish legacy path milestones. It sucks. I don't think Firaxis realized that for the majority of people, the snowball is the progression. And with Civ 7, there's just massive loss of progress. It sucks. It really, really sucks. It is unfun, and it is bad game design. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's a rant and I'm sorry. But I mean, honestly, maybe the too long didn't read here is that none of these issues can actually be solved because, once again, they go against the core fundamental mechanics that are Civ 7. And unfortunately, this one truly may not be solved unless they actually implement the dreaded words that have been echoed across a multitude of forums and social media's classic mode. I don't think Firaxis is going to do this. It goes against the actual design of the game itself, and from what I understand, from what Firaxis is saying and what modders have said, each age is its own standalone mod for the game. So I imagine trying to bring in something like a classic mode honestly just might be literally impossible. To be fair, they already made legacy paths optional, but making a change that is literally the backbone of their game, such as the age transitions, feels like such a drastic one that if it gets to that point, I mean, someone's getting fired or they just stop supporting Civ 7 at that point and start working on, like, I don't know, Civ 5 remastered. Okay, don't give them any ideas. Let me circle back to momentum and pacing, or I guess a familiar word for this would be the word snowball. Gamers don't like to be interrupted or reset back to the point where they started without good reason. But with Civ 7, it resets you for reasons, and reasons that I think are bad game design. I understand Firaxis' point of the resets. It resets for the slingshot mechanic for the AI to catch up to you, for trying to bring a historical tie to the game, because throughout time, civilizations rise and fall. Counterpoint, that already happens in Civ games. Civilizations already rise and fall when a Civ gets absolutely destroyed, or when they become irrelevant. They fall, they collapse, they cease to exist. Whether it's 100% of the way wiped out, or they just become such a minor power that they're basically a city-state at that point. I also find it funny that literally everyone I know just turns off crises because they're just not fun to play with. They remind me of Apocalypse mode in Civ 6 in that it's fun to have on every once in a while if you just want to have a silly game for stream, but 99% of the time I'm turning them off. Additionally, going back to momentum and pacing, having the AI catch up to you because reasons completely devalues all of the hard work that you accomplished in the previous age, further reinforcing the feeling of starting over from scratch when you transition into a new age. As I stated earlier, for a majority of players, the snowball is the progression, and when you take away what is perceived by the player as meaningful progression without a valid reason, then that is bad game design. And it sucks, because Firaxis is stuck now between a rock and a hard place trying to please everyone. Do they want to continue with making age transitions less jarring? Should they make them even harder or not at all? I feel like they need to go 100% all in and make it so you completely reset, everything crumbles, new age, all this jazz, but doing things like making continuity mode the default, having options to turn off crises, just kind of makes the game a bit more dull. And that brings me to my final point, specifically about the gameplay of Civilization 7. In nearly all of the updates, all of the changes, everything that's more or less gone into the development of Civ 7 feels like Firaxis themselves just aren't getting it. That's a really tough idea to communicate and let alone flesh out what someone means by getting it when it comes to a strategy game. But for the majority of people who played Civ and don't like it, they know immediately when they start playing. Each of the decisions made for the game seem to be focusing, at least for me, on the raw aspect of what players actually want versus what the developers think gamers want. Let's go through a few examples. This first one is a kind of a small one, but it's such a telltale sign of the overarching design of Civ 7, and that is tech queuing. I could not believe that tech queuing was not in the game on day 0, especially considering it was when my specific feedback that was given to them immediately after playtesting. But that is beside the point, because something as inconsequential as tech queuing can just be added later via patch, and hey, wouldn't you know it, it has been added. But not in the way that people expect, let alone the way it should be implemented. Tech queuing to me is analogous to the big idea of the Civ franchise, which has always been about plotting your own path through history with technologies you could, using Civ 6 as an example, choose to go, such as mining first, and then you queue up pottery, into writing, into archery, into irrigation, into astrology if you chose to do so. You click the first technology that you want, then you shift-click queue the subsequent technologies that you want to research afterwards, and it queues them up for you. But in Civ 7 doesn't do it that way. Let's say you wanted to go pottery first after agriculture. Great. You click pottery, it goes down that leaf. Then let's say you wanted to go into writing, and then down to animal husbandry into masonry. You think you would be able to use the shift queue technique, but you cannot. You can only queue techs that come before the final tech that you want to research in that leaf, in that linear path, not in any other way that you have unlocked. You cannot even queue up sailing into pottery into animal husbandry. You have to select them individually. You cannot shift queue text in order that you want to unlock them. I don't know why. This is a very small, minute example that can be fixed fairly easily, right? In the end, it's not detrimental to the game overall, but it shows what I think is the biggest flaw of Civilization 7, in that developers continuously miss the forest for the trees about what makes a good Civ game great. We didn't realize that Auto Explore was such a highly sought after mechanic, so we brought it back. It's been in every single game I can remember, and while it's not an important mechanic to the validity of the game, there's a reason it's there. We wanted to remove excessive micromanagement from the game to give players a more streamlined approach to the more important things of the game. Somehow ends up adding more micromanagement to the game, making games feel even longer than usual because you have to continuously do things like set text, set civics, move resources, etc. We added a reset option so that way you don't snowball too far on the AI and make the game competitive. People actually like snowballing and get ahead of the AI, and if they don't get to that point and lose the game, then players go out of their way to get better at the game and learn how to do so. That's literally why content creators exist. We added a continuity mode so that way it feels less jarring when you're in an age transition. Unfortunately, it ends up breaking some specific civs because of this change, like Carthage, in an attempt to fix what people already didn't want and makes the games worse. These are a bunch of small examples. It just further validates of what I'm trying to say here. I mean, another example that I actually thought of recently in the middle of writing the script that I hoped would get fixed, but I honestly have no idea how they're going to do so. It's what I call the humankind problem. And no, it's not civ switching. I think the only issue with civ switching has nothing to do with like the immersion, but more to do with the fact that the differences between civs is so marginal that for the most part, it feels like there's no reason to pick one civ over the other. Obviously, there are some changes, but you know what I mean. The humankind problem that I'm talking about is when everything is good, nothing is good. One of the biggest changes Firaxis made that from all of the other Civ games to Civ 7 is the way that yields are distributed. Yields are distributed among tiles, among buildings, everything. This was explained to me as a way to, quote unquote, eliminate re-rolling for a good map. And to be honest, this just felt like maybe Firaxis watched too many deity streamers like myself and were tired of watching us re-roll in Civ 6 until we started on a Plains Hill so we could have a 2-2 starting tile. While there are differences in between terrain types, now everything is a good settle, and everything feels the same. It feels the same to settle on tundra as it feels the same to settle on desert, as it feels the same to settle on plains. The differences between them, while there are some, are so small that in the long run, it does not matter which of those tiles you settle on the first place. Because of this, all resources are more or less freely available. There's no lack of iron to build your swordsman or aluminum to build your planes. Because of this takes out the tension of seeing another civ have these resources, which takes out the decision making of either having to go to war with them or ally them because you don't have them. Since everything is available and nothing is required because everything is the same and nothing matters, this makes the difference between civs themselves even more minuscule. There's no Norway civ where you gain extra yields from pillaging and you use this early with your super early boats to gain advantages to balance out not getting districts. There's no Yongla where you use your special abilities to get things early that will help you out later. There's no Vietnam where you can only build your districts on terrain features. There's no uniqueness. There's no varying playstyles. There's no meaningful variety. This continues further with the buildings in districts. In Civ 6, there was a very distinct and specific difference in choosing which district you're going to build, whether it be a campus, a holy site, industrial zone, etc. And you were more than likely never going to be building every single type of district in that game, let alone in a single city. But in Civ 7, you're building everything regardless of what victory condition you're going for. It's the modern age, and hey, you built a district that is giving you 87 yields on that tile. Is that good? I imagine so, because bigger number equals better. But can you realistically decipher why it's good outside of the rest of your yields comparing them? No. Each tile is giving you bonkers yields, which makes large number look good, which makes your empire look good, regardless of what you build and regardless of whether or not it is actually good. So you build more buildings, which give you larger number, and you build more building in the same spot because you're beholden to building next to civilians in the same order every single game, and it's just the same. It's the same game over and over, no matter what civ you choose, no matter what leader you choose, no matter what age transition you're in. It's the same game every time. All of your actual yields, everything that you're getting per turn is coming from specialists and codices, in which the specialists don't even need to be in your science buildings because you're going to get them regardless of where you place your specialists. You're going to get the science, you're going to get the culture, you're going to get the yields, and it doesn't matter which building you place them in. Even wonders are less impactful than previous games because they generally just give you small modifiers. Post-production boasts. Yes, I know they changed wonders in this updated patch. The point still stands. It's constant minor changes that build up your number steadily through the game, and that's it. It's a middle school math problem. There's no meaningful impact. There's no decision making. There's no tension. You just do it. It's uninteresting, and this is why it's boring. This is why it's boring. I won't touch too much on Legacy Pass and victory conditions because honestly, out of everything that I'm talking about, those are the easiest to change, right? Because of right now, it's just for victory conditions, accumulate X points, do one last thing. You know, accumulate cities, build Operation Ivy, accumulate artifacts, build the World's Fair. The end game is all the same for them, so it doesn't really matter what direction you picked because you can pick any of them and still come up with the same outcome. That feels exactly the same as the others, whereas in previous games, you know, each victory condition felt distinctly separate from the other. Sorry. Something else I wanted to talk about that's actually, I mean, it kind of legit makes me upset is when it comes to the pricing of the DLC and the content that we're getting with it. Now, I want to make it clear, I said this in my previous videos, Civ 7 is doing exactly what they have done previously with Civ games when it comes to the amount of civs, wonders, bonuses, benefits as they have in other games. I use this argument in defense of Firaxis in my initial review, but now this is wrong, and here is why. Let's say the Right to Rule collection came out in Civ 6. You would immediately be able to play with everything in that pack from clicking Start Game and choosing what you want from turn 0. Now, with the way that Civ 7 works with the age transitions, you technically get to play with everything in that pack, but you only get to play with them for a certain period of time. You can only play with the Dai Viet in the Exploration Age. You can only play with the Wat Chin Thong in the Exploration Age. You can only play with the Qatar Ziv in Qajar? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. In the Modern Age. You are age restricted from playing these civs that are being released in these new DLC packs, and because the Modern Age is so quick, I mean, sometimes it could literally last 30 turns, you're getting even less value out of these DLC. Now, buying the DLC doesn't mean that you can't play them, right? You could start a Modern Age game if you wanted to, but that's not the point. You're getting less value out of these DLCs. And I mentioned it earlier, and I think I said this in my previous review, but I'm still kind of mad at Firaxis for the argument when they said, well, technically, this is the most amount of civs that have ever been released in a vanilla civ. And that is true, but you only get to play with 10 at a time. And being only to be able to play with 10 at a time feels a bit disingenuous. Do I think Firaxis thinks their player base are idiots? No, I don't think that way, but my God, does it feel that way sometimes. Removing builders, not allowing you to swap tiles between cities, not breaking down when and how you're receiving yields, making the victory conditions hyperlinear. The list goes on and on. It's funny because, yeah, the game of Civ itself has gotten a little bit dumber, quote unquote, with each release. But with them wanting to release it on console on day 0, it feels like their opinion on console players is that console players drool on their controllers and they need their handheld. Honestly, I actually feel like this is one of the bigger issues that people aren't identifying with and don't necessarily realize that that's the issue they have with the game in general. In general, remember, big generalization here. The majority of people who play games like Civ, like Stellaris, you know, even they like grand strategy games, they love Factorio, they love Europa. They're PC gamers, the type of people who like complex mechanics, who like the fact that if they don't know something, they can hover over a leaf and get information. They can look it up on Civilopedia. They can min-max their play style. You know, I'm not necessarily stating that they're smarter than console players. They're not, but they want those complex mechanics and to understand them and to feel good when they execute their understanding of them. This doesn't mean that we want to play like a text version of Dwarf Fortress. That's a special breed of player. But when you introduce something that is beloved to this core group of players that is essentially a hand-holding training wheel fest, you're gonna get backlash. And this conflates from here because how can you tell if something is a bad idea in Civ 7? Is it bad game design, as I had mentioned earlier? Or was it a good idea that was poorly implemented because it was rushed and some things that were core to the mechanic of it got stripped out? Does it have some really neat concepts that maybe needed another year of testing and brainstorming to flesh out correctly? Who knows? We don't know at this point. I don't know, man. At this time, I'm not gonna be playing Civ 7 outside of maybe a handful of challenges that I might post on this channel, because at this time the game is just, it's not fun for me. Is there a way to salvage Civ 7? Yeah, I think so, but I mean, I don't know if they have A, the time, or B, they'll do it. The biggest issues with Civ 7 aren't fixable by periodic patches throughout the year. I mean, they require massive core changes to the structural mechanics of the game, and I wouldn't be surprised if in Firaxis's mind that's just not even worth to attempt to change those at this state. I mean, we're already 6 months post-release date. The game is playable at its current state. There is a solid enough player base that like the transitions and the changes that the game will have some life. But I mean, in order to grasp those 40K a day players of Civ 6 and transition them over to the 7K players of Civ 7 is going to require, for me at least, bare minimum, these two things to change: the age transitions and having everything feel the same. I'll be honest, I don't care about the Civ switching. The actual issue that I have about Civ switching is included with the stuff that I mentioned earlier, in that everything feels the same, so there's no identity to anything. And that is something that is honestly very lost right now with Firaxis and Civ 7. There's no identity to the game. And unfortunately, the only identity to the game that can be found right now that is pervasive everywhere, from talking to people in person, to reading forums, to reading Steam reviews, is that the game is just not good. I am not a game designer. I'm not very good at articulating my thoughts on specific things like modifiers, math, and numbers that need to change. So if you are better than me at that, please leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. Like, maybe you have some ideas on changes to, I don't know, fucking the formulas that they use for calculating happiness, you know? Like, I'm just a silly himbo man who plays games and uploads them to YouTube, so people can go, haha, wow, funny, man, or wow, he did challenge really well. I honestly, I hate making this type of video because my entire channel has been based around the Civilization franchise. You can go back and see some old Civ 5 videos of me playing on D80 from 12 years ago. I mean, I want this game to do well. I want to be able to upload Civ 7 content and enjoy the content I'm making, and the content to be lucrative, and even enjoy the game that I'm playing. But right now, it's not the case. Right now, I don't enjoy playing the game. I don't enjoy seeing the results of playing the game. I don't enjoy seeing the negativity from the feedback of the game. So in the meantime, I hope you at least enjoyed this review part 2. And again, you know, if you have any more insights or thoughts, you know, or if you disagree with me, let me know down below. If I had to redo the review over again, I probably just would have given it a flat 6 out of 10, because that doesn't mean the game is god awful. That doesn't mean the game is incredible. It means the game is very mid, and that is how I feel about the game right now. Will I be playing it in the future? Like I said, probably not, probably just for challenges. That also kind of coincides to the future of this channel video. I'll talk way more in depth about the future of this channel video, but once again, the Too Long Didn't Read is going to be, I'm going to be branching out of Civilization as a franchise and doing other games. They'll all be closely related, but, you know, I'll still be doing some Civ 6 challenges I have up my sleeve. I'm going to be, you know, a couple other games that I want to do, like Factorio, Stardew Valley, Project Zomboid, stuff like that is going to be coming to this channel. Additionally, if you just wanted to watch like full long form content, I am going to be active on my Patreon again. I haven't been very good at that in the past, but I feel like after being in that phase of kind of not wanting to do YouTube for a bit and then editing and realizing, oh, I actually do, it's kind of kicked my ass a little bit. And yeah, I already have 2 full-length playthroughs. Well, not full length, the game isn't completed, but 2 multiple hour long playthroughs of Civilization 6 Al-Andalus. Yes, Armin, Al-Andalus is here. They're going to be up on my Patreon. There are 2 tiers. There's a free tier, which the free tier on Patreon is basically you get all my blog update posts, stuff like that. There's a $1 Patreon access, which that gets you early access to YouTube videos. I'll be uploading like behind the scenes, day in the life videos on there. And then there's the $5 tier where you get all the stuff from before, as well as you get to watch those unedited long form videos of me playing games like Civilization 6. I have a Civ 5 Poland game I'm going to be doing after that as well. And then once I finish those Civ games, I'm going to be alternating between Civ and non-Civ games, stuff that I've always wanted to play that don't apply to my channel or to my stream, like games like XCOM, Parkitect, Red Dead Redemption 2. I still haven't played that yet, and I'd love to. City Skylines, you know, stuff like that I probably wouldn't upload to my main channel. So the plan right now is to have 2 videos a week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. Tuesday one will be the Civ one, a Thursday will be the non-Civ one, and I'll alternate until I finish those. But anyways, that's enough for my Patreon plug. Eventually I'm going to be uploading like photos and stuff on there. I have I have an Instagram that I use that is basically, I just use it as like a photo dump at the end of the month, so you can follow that as well. I'm not gonna lie, this video kind of sucked to make. It was a lot of words. It was a lot of script writing. I'm so like, once, like, Firaxis, I know you know that I'm not coming this out of maliciousness. I want your game to do well. I love all of you guys. I have good friends that work there. You know who you are. And it probably hurts to hear from someone like me, but this is just how I feel about the game at this point. Yeah. Anyways, that's all for that. I thank you all for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Bye now.